All right, we're back live again, and Senate Transportation Committee continues our discussion on the T-bill. And Theo, go ahead and take off where you left off. Yep.
Okay, so we had just left off after section 18, and the next section would be Senator Perchlik's proposal, section 18A. I will put that up on the screen. And this is to establish the goals for the locations of level 3 charging stations within 5 miles of every exit off the interstate, and so that there's no more than 50 miles to another level 3 charging station that's along a public state highway or along a state highway available to the public, and then requiring annual just filings of an updated map showing these locations not later than January 15th of each year until the goal is met. So that is 18A.
Michelle, any comment?
Sorry, Senator. Yes, we are supportive of this language proposed by Senator Perchlik.
Okay, all right. That was easy.
But one for Andy.
Yeah, he gets a lot of wins. Yeah.
He's always right.
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh my God. Now I know why you own 2 electric cars. Now I figured it out. I think he's working for some car dealership. Okay, go ahead, Anthea.
Okay, so your next section, section 19, this was an addition by the House. It's not something that was included in the governor's recommend. As it passed out of the House, it was saying that it is the intent of the General Assembly for both the urban public transit and the rural public transit that during fiscal year 2022, it would be provided on a zero fare basis. And then it lists out the source of funding for that zero fare basis coverage through the 3 federal bills that have passed that provided public transit funding. There was the CARES Act, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021, and then most recently ARPA. The language that you see in the right column highlighted in purple is just including the public law citation. And then the language below that was a request from the administration to require for the urban public transit that the zero fare basis needs to be approved by the governing body of the transit agency. And I know there was a question about which pot of money within ARPA this was coming from, and this is coming from the public transit pot of money that Vermont got an apportionment of. And there's the email that came through from Costa with confirmation from JFO on that numbering. So this is not coming from the general state pot of ARPA funding. This is a public transit specific pot of money.
If the governor is expected to open the state up, and if we stay on the same path by July of this year, why would we go through all of 2022 and not find a way to collect fares? I don't understand that part of it.
It's very simple. It's to incentivize putting people into use public transit rather than hopping in their car.
So that means zero fare again, like I asked the other day, from long distances like Burlington to Montpelier.
Mhm.
Only if it's agreed to by the governing body.
And I would need confirmation from someone, but I see Michelle nodding as to whether or not all of those longer routes are under the urban transit.
Yeah, that
program.
bothers me. Get free transportation from Montpelier to Burlington or St. Albans.
I mean, this was done for safety. More than anything, it was done for safety, not to transfer monies to back and forth between hands and stuff. And yeah, and I get it, Senator Kitchell, that they want to increase the ridership. But
A couple bucks would hurt. Yeah.
I don't see where a couple bucks would hurt, but
No, I was just stating the motivation behind it. It's,
yeah.
it's the extent to which
Well, does it cover long distance or does it not?
So Senator Mazza, right now, it does not clarify that the transit organization would have to collect the fare on a long distance trip, like a link trip. There are other transit agencies which have somewhat long distance trips. I believe Actor, which serves a connecting route between the Middlebury area and the Burlington area, coordinates with Green Mountain Transit. I just don't off the top of my head know the details of how the fare breakdown works for those longer commuter type services. Senator Chittenden may have more detail.
My apologies for arriving late or missing part of this conversation. As a former GMT board member, the one other thing that I would add to this is what I recall from their testimony and from my experience there. I think that the COVID aspect was really so that they could not just reduce the exchange of dollars and spreading germs that way, but also for the buses with both a back door and a front door, allowing people to enter both without congestions and so on, and creating a flow of traffic. My understanding is the Link Express, the longer distance ones, they only have one door. So I like the language that trusts the Board of Commissioners to evaluate this, where we are in the pandemic as we go forward, and determine whether or not fees should be collected on those links. I really trust that board. They're very thoughtful. They understand the dollars and cents of it, to Senator Ingalls' point. And I think that they will come to a conclusion that collecting fares for the links will make sense when it does, and they will start to collect those fees, as it is expensive to run public transportation. So I just trust that board.
But there's no incentive for them to charge. I mean, if they can do it for free, I think they want to do it for free, right? I mean,
I would just add, Senator Mazza, that there is an incentive for them to charge, because the monies that they receive, which are defraying the fares right now, could be used for other things within the system. And that's why they came to us and asked that they not be required to go fare free if they felt, that ridership was doing better, and that they could, reasonably collect a fare, or they wanted to collect the fare on the link routes, but maybe not the local routes. I think that they were concerned that the House provision would have prohibited them from collecting fares for the coming year. They receive their direct federal funding for this, and they oversee it as a board of their own. The state doesn't provide input to that process. I mean, we have collaboration and dialogue, but that's why they asked for the language, in order to be able to make their decision based on the ground status of things.
okay. Any other questions? Is it all right? Yes, no?
So the language says now, just to be clear, that if the board decided that they could charge fares safely, and that they have the ability to do that.
So it doesn't go into that level of detail. What it requires is that the urban transit be provided on a zero fare basis with this funding as practicable, and requires that the use be approved by the governing body of the transit agency. So it's not that they can't charge it it's more they need to say, we want to charge on a zero fare basis. They need to sort of affirmatively approve that use. And there's not anything in the language that requires what sort of detailed analysis you just described. That could be the exact analysis that they use, but it does give them flexibility to say, we're approving the use, and then at some point we are not approving the use if they wanted to start zero fare and transition to non-zero fare. And
Thank
the addition is provided that such use is first approved by the governing body of the transit agency. So you'll see that highlighted in the right column.
Okay, what are your wishes? Any comments? Committee, you want to wait? You want to act on it? What do you want to do?
I'm okay as is.
Anybody else? All right, other members? Yes?
I think that having the language in around the governing body should,
Take care of it, you think?
it's not, that's the thing. It's giving them the authority to do it. It's not precluding or requiring. That's
Okay,
But Senator Chittenden is probably the most knowledgeable person on this because of his past involvement in public transit.
So Senator Chittenden,
I support this. I trust that governing body and all the agencies. They have really thoughtful individuals that are going to weigh these things. And in this fluid environment, in this pandemic, I think this is the right language to have them adjust accordingly as we go forward in the next year.
okay,
It's only
I'm-
for a year.
all right.
I'm
let's
good.
go for it.
I'm
Let's
good.
go for it.
I'm
All
good.
right.
Yep.
Okay, check her out. Thank you. Okay. Next,
Had to unmute myself. Your next section is a House House addition. This is past the body to have the coordinated intermodal connections review. So the agency needs to coordinate with public transit, passenger rail, and other transportation service providers to review and implement coordinated intermodal connections as practicable, so that there are efficient connections between those different modes of transportation in the state. And the agency also needs to work with transportation service providers to support the cross promotion of intermodal connections. This is a requirement that they do something, but there is not a report associated with it or any kind of deliverable back to the General Assembly. And this was not a proposal that came from the governor. It was added by the House, and there are no proposed changes for your consideration, but you get to decide whether or not it stays.
sounds like it doesn't harm anything. Anybody have any objections to it? No, I don't see any hands. Okay, let's go for it. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I'm now going to jump away just for a moment from the side-by-side to instead just put up language that is identical to what's in the side-by-side, except there is one word that is highlighted to show a change that VEC suggested yesterday and the Department of Public Service supports. This is with the utility rate design language. I also can provide an update that this is scheduled in Senate Finance next Tuesday. They're taking testimony. I'm going to do a walkthrough, but Riley Allen from DPS is going to be there to answer any technical questions, because I can say what the language does, but not what a lot of the rate setting terms mean. And I believe they're going to be taking testimony from many of the electric distribution utilities that you heard from yesterday. So I don't know if this is something that the committee just wants to pass over now, or what you would like to do with it. But I just was going to point out to you that VEC had made the suggestion, instead of it saying implement PEV rates on line 7, it would offer PEV rates. And Riley Allen has said that DPS is fine with that.
Yeah, I think we just pass over it to wait for finance to get back to us on Tuesday, or I guess Wednesday.
I think we, as a courtesy, should, but did the language that has, didn't have the offer alternative?
I believe they do not have that. What I can do is I can send this over to Faith Brown, their committee assistant, and make sure it makes it to all of the members of the committee in advance of next Tuesday. And I'll just have it be just a standalone, just section 21 without the rest of the bill that they can post to.
Okay, I think that it would be time-wise, it would be better to say this language change was recommended and make them aware of it so that they're looking at that as part of their review.
I will provide the source of the recommendation and the fact that DPS has said that.
Yeah, that I think would be helpful.
And I will CC Senator Perchlik on that, so he stays fully in the loop as your liaison on this.
Oh, all right, we're counting on him
Careful, careful.
for this, just for this, Dave.
No. Okay, all right. Next.
Okay, so your next section, going back to the side-by-side, section 22 is going to be the public transportation electrification plan. This was included in the governor's recommend. The House made no changes. There have been no proposed changes for you to consider. And it requires the Agency of Transportation to consult with public transit providers and prepare a long-range plan that outlines the cost, timeline, training, maintenance, and operational actions required to move to a fully electrified public transportation fleet. And there is a report back to the House and Senate committees on transportation on that long-range plan not later than January 31st of 2022.
Okay. All right, no questions, all right.
I had one question, Senator Mann,
Sure, go ahead.
for Michelle. What on operational actions, is that AOT or is that like by the GMT?
So we want to make sure that there's a clear understanding of the pathway relative to any maintenance obligations, trainings, adoption of equipment, installation, so that, we have a system that's going to be able to advance in a rational manner.
So it's more on the public transportation operators, not AOT. Because I wondered kind of about our conversation that you and I had, Michelle, about, the capacities within the agency to do this big kind of market transformation of the whole transportation fleet to electricity and how that's being coordinated with all these different programs. And I know this is just focused on public transportation, but I just wondered if the report is also looking at AOT structure and how they are overseeing this work.
Yeah, I would say no, not necessarily within this framework. In this particular area, the onus, other than our sort of oversight role and funding role, which may be significant, obviously, with transformation, the operations are going to be at the transit provider level in terms of implementation. So I guess I don't have a clear answer to your question. I do recognize that this area is of concern to you relative to our capacity to implement new programs, but it's something that we're considering, but I don't envision that being a part of this report.
Okay, well, I'm fine with the way the language is, but I guess I'm inviting the agency to think about that aspect of it as it thinks about the plan.
Yes.
Okay. All right, next.
So check off 22 or?
Yeah, what's the, do I hear any objections to checking it off? No? Okay,
Nope.
thank you. If you are, just speak up, and when we get the final draft, then we can, but this is just to keep things moving, okay? Thank you. All right,
So your next section is section 23. This is the language that allows the Agency of Transportation to have signs in certain locations directing individuals to state-owned airports and inner-city passenger rail stations that are located within 25 miles of a limited access highway exit. So this is an additional exemption to the state's sign law. Currently, unless it's an international airport or it is a multimodal center, those are the only instances where there would be signage allowed, and there are parameters there. But this would be allowing if the state-owned airport or the inner-city passenger rail was within that geographic distance from the limited access facility exit, that there could be signage, not requiring it, but saying that there could be. And those signs would need to be consistent with the MUTC, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. That language was included in the governor's recommend. That language was included in what passed out of House Transportation and out of the full body. No changes were made. You now have before you an additional proposal from the Agency of Transportation to just add an additional requirement for purposes of the banner exception that was added to the sign law 2 years ago. So under current law, a sign that is a banner erected over a highway right of way, and I know Michelle talked to you about the 1111 permits for right of ways, for not more than 21 days is allowed if the bottom of the banner is a certain distance above the surface of the highway, securely fastened in a particular way. And then where you're getting your new language is requiring that the proposed banner has been authorized by the legislative body of the municipality in which it's located. So that would be a new requirement before falling under this existing exception to the sign law. So that is the request from the agency that was made after this language made it out of the House. To the best of my knowledge, this didn't come up in House Transportation, nor were they aware of the request.
Michelle, how different is that than today? If a sign was going over today, what happens today?
Well, today, if a sign is going up, oftentimes it is the municipality that's getting a section 1111 permit to put the sign up, so they are aware. But from time to time, there might be other special interest organizations like the Chamber of Commerce or a theater group or an advocacy group that wants to hang a banner over the state highway on a state route that's not controlled by the town. And so the town wouldn't necessarily have the input, and we are just seeking to clarify that the messaging on these banners, which are pretty prominent feature in a community, are endorsed by the legislative body.
And there's no fee attached to this, it's just.
No,
Okay. There's no fee.
beyond, the section 1111 permit review fee that might be required already anyways.
Yeah, because we all worry about, look what they're painting all over the bridges these days. I mean, gosh, they're painting everything, all kinds of stuff. We want to make sure it has a check and balance that before something goes up, it's, there's so many things today, you got to be very sensitive of what you put up there.
Maybe
Okay,
this
Yeah.
could be an option for the town of Woodstock. They could put a
yeah, that's right.
no
No,
truck banner or something,
No.
go across the yellow line. or-
$360 fine, you already kicked in right now, as of now. Cops waiting for you in the corner. Okay, any issue with this part of it? Anybody got any issue with this? I don't see any. Okay, go for it. All right.
Okay, you now have two sections that deal with kind of the interaction between municipal review through the site plan review or subdivision review and the 1111 permit. So under current law, there is a requirement that if a proposed site plan involves access to a state highway, and this would be expanding it to other work in the state highway right of way, such as excavation, grading, paving, or utility installation, probably something for which they would need the 1111 permit in any event. So it's already required, not changing when the 1111 permit is required. The application for site plan approval currently needs to include a letter of intent from the agency confirming that the agency has reviewed the proposed site plan and is prepared to issue an access permit under 1111 and setting out in that letter of intent any conditions that the agency proposes to attach to that 1111 permit. Instead of requiring the letter of intent with all of those conditions, this language is, and I think it's a clarification of what the intent was when this was added to statute several years ago before my time. Instead, the application for site plan approval would need to include a letter from the agency confirming that the agency has done the necessary review for the 1111 permit, has determined whether or not a permit is required, so not kind of presupposing that there is going to be a permit with conditions required. And if the agency has determined that the permit for the site plan is required under 1111, then the letter from the agency needs to include those conditions. So it's kind of changing the process a bit and providing clarification that you're not presupposing that an 1111 permit is necessary. And then I think providing clarification on when you might need that 1111 permit. It's not just if the site plan involves access to the state highway, it could also be if there's other work being done in the state highway. This section kind of goes hand in hand with section 25, which is the subdivision review, again, on the municipal level. And if that subdivision is adjacent to a state highway, requiring that same process. So the application would need to include the letter from the Agency of Transportation saying whether or not they have determined that an 1111 permit is necessary. And if they have determined that the 1111 permit is necessary, including those proposed permit conditions. This language has not changed either of these sections by the House. There's no proposals from the administration or anyone else that I'm aware of to change this language to deviate from what the governor included in the policy proposals for the T-bill.
Questions, comments? Anybody?
Nope.
Is that all right? Okay. Yep, all right, go ahead. Thank you.
I will say that this has got me interested in next time I run for office, possibly putting a big Tom Chittenden for state senate banner across the roadways, but I don't know if that's legal or not, but I'm going to look into it. So thank
No,
you.
it's not illegal. No, I'm gonna, you know,
You'll have to go to the South Burlington Select.
Yeah,
or
that's right.
Council, see if
yeah,
they might not approve it.
yeah, that's right. That's right. Yep.
Okay, so before we move on completely from the 1111 permit, a third section, section 26. Again, there have been no changes to this language from what the governor included in the proposed policy changes for the T-bill. Under the current law, in order to get a permit amendment for an 1111 permit, you would need to follow the existing fee schedule, which I can pull up if the committee is interested in seeing. This would be saying that permit amendments, without regard to what sort of permit the underlying permit was, would be a $0 fee. There is a fiscal note on this, and I believe, and Chris is here and he can jump in if I'm wrong, that looking back over the last 3 years, on average, the agency was collecting $3,700 per year in permit amendment fees. And then one thing just to remind the committee of is language that you included in the T-bill last year is already allowing the Secretary of Transportation to waive the 1111 permit fees right now due to COVID, and that authorization is set to expire 6 months after the state of emergency is over. No changes are proposed at this time from the administration or from anyone else that I'm aware of. And that would be the language staying consistent from the earlier versions.
Okay. Everything all right? All right.
Yep.
Go ahead. Yep.
Okay, section 27 is not something that was included in the governor's proposed language. It was an addition from House Transportation. It's requiring improvements of the high-use corridor segment for bicyclists to continue to be improved consistent with existing statute, which says when you need to make improvements to the shoulder or otherwise make the highways more accessible. Specifying that these improvements are in order to enhance safety and accessibility on highways, and that in particular, it's to improve accessibility on the high-use corridor segments that were identified in the on-road bicycle plan prepared in April 2016 or any subsequent update to that plan. And then requiring that the agency consider traffic volume, the scope of the project, and other factors such as environmental or right-of-way impacts when making improvements to these highways. There's no deliverable, there's no mandate. This isn't going into codified law. So it's really just saying Agency of Transportation, continue following the codified law, consider these different criteria when you're making these determinations, and that this is being done in part to enhance accessibility on these certain highways that have been identified as part of this high use corridor.
What is different than we're doing today? That's my question. Why?
Right, mine too.
Well, why are we putting more language if we're doing it? Michelle, could you help me here? I don't understand what's happening.
This outlines our current practice, and it was not language we proposed. One of the members of House Transportation was interested in highlighting for us what we should be doing, which we did talk about that we're already doing.
We have been the leader in this for many years.
Right.
I remember many years ago doing this because we were ahead of everyone else, making sure that when we paved or we did any reconstruction of a highway, that was, and it proves it. I mean, you look around the state, we've done a fantastic job. So I don't know why this is needed. I'm confused here. What's happening? Is that something?
It sounds like verbatim of what the state's already doing. I mean, it's already in there.
I don't
So
know
why
they want-
add it?
Is that needed, Michelle, or what's your thought on this? I mean,
I guess we feel that it's not needed because this is our current practice, and we are proactively doing this for all, projects that we evaluate, whether it's, a paving job that's only going to last, that's one of those interim ones that lasts 4 or 5 years till we can get to the reconstruction job. If there's space on the shoulder, we're adding some additional pavement. So I feel like this is the practice we're undertaking, and that we've created these bike plans, understanding where we have higher use of the state highway network for biking, and making sure that we're making enhancements in those areas.
One of the things I will bring up again, and it has bothered me, is the fact that we are still not addressing the concerns about safety on bicycles who are now using our highways as their main course of travel, which I do not object, but I don't think it's clearly defined anywhere what you have to do when you grab a bicycle and go out on the highway and use it in the line of traffic, or because at one time it was only on the right-hand side of the highway, but now it's in traffic. And so when I heard throughout our testimony that there's no restrictions whatsoever, anybody can just grab a bike and go down Williston Road or anywhere, and without any sort of training or knowledge of what the laws are, and we don't allow that with automobiles, and we certainly shouldn't, but no one seems to be addressing that concern. And maybe it's not a concern, maybe it's just mine, but I think as we encourage bicyclists to get out there, I think there should be some sort of program or something that they understand the rules of the highway when they ride their bike right down in the traffic. And I see more and more of it today, and I think everybody here on this committee sees more of it every day, which is not a bad idea. But if we're going to put emphasis on putting bike paths, which I agree, that's fine, but we're not addressing the concern about safety and bicycles on our highways. So I guess I said this before.
I just want to go back. It seems to me this language is somewhat analogous to our discussion about the Lamoille Valley. And are we using this budget to instruct the department of the agency to do what it's already doing? And we could load these bills down with all kinds of language.
Go into it.
And so I would suggest that that language that is instructive, that basically says keep doing what you're doing, is a bit unnecessary, because everybody's going to have something that we would like to make sure you continue to do what you're doing. And so I'm not sure that this adds anything other than language.
Right.
And
Agreed.
that's only my thought. And why we have to be so prescriptive and so forth when we've set forth sort of broader policy statements about what we want to do. So I would remove it.
Yes, Senator Pertlick.
I would agree with Senator Kitchell's statement there in general, but my understanding, and I heard from some road bikers about this section, and that the reason it was added in the House was that they felt like that the agency wasn't doing it. So I don't know if we want to try to hear from somebody.
You know what I would do? Let's do what we do in the budget all the time. We can write a letter of legislative intent. And so it, if there's something there that we want to make a special statement on, this might be one, the Lamoille Valley Rail, as it relates to maintenance. We just want to, that we recognize that this work is underway, and the agency plans, and, that just we want to restate our intent that this work continue, and do something outside these bills. And we can do a separate statement of legislative intent like we do with the budget.
I can't believe that we're, like I said, I've been around this issue a long time, and Vermont has been right in the forefront of providing bike lanes, and every project that we work on, there's a bike lane if possible. That's what I'm surprised that someone is thinking that it's not there. So I would agree with Senator Kitchell and remove this at this time and have a letter written. So.
And there might be, as we say, if we remove the Lamoille Valley language as well, which is sort of the same thing, we could we could, and if there are other areas that people just want to have affirmation of our intent or our support, we could add it and deal with it that way.
I'm not sure it was there. That was the goal. That's my only hesitance to take it out is that my understanding is that wasn't their intent, just to say an affirmation to say, hey, keep doing what you're doing, but that it was a change. But
Oh, well, then we need to get clarification on that.
yeah,
I
and I
thought
don't know
Michelle,
if the language in B is different or all that is just exactly the same language. I thought maybe B was adding language, but that's my only concern because we didn't hear anybody about why it was in there. So that's my only concern of taking it out.
So on the language, what I would point out, and I can put it back up on the screen, is you'll see that in subsection A, it says the Agency of Transportation shall continue to improve highways consistent with what's in codified law
Right.
in order to enhance, et cetera, et cetera. And then for subsection B, it says the agency shall consider traffic volumes, the scope of the project, and other factors as environmental. So there is, and this language was worked on by a member in consultation with the Agency of Transportation. I don't know if it was just an oversight not to use continue here and the shall continue to consider, or if this is something that is not currently being considered and now will be considered.
That was my question. That on B, is that new language or that's the same? That's just more doing the same.
So all of this is new language in that it's
Well,
session
yeah,
law, it's
the
not
A
in
is-
codified law.
A is to say follow the law. So I agree with Senator Kitchell on A, but B, that was my question.
And maybe that's something to hear from someone who is an
Well, I
advocate
can't
for,
imagine they're making a decision without considering traffic volumes, the scope of the
So-
project. And yes, Senator, yes, go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you, Senator Mazza. So we did work with the House member on this language. And we do use those factors when we're analyzing it. And I don't know why we didn't say and continue to use these factors, but those are the factors we use. I guess that's all I can offer at this point.
Okay.
so for both A and B, it really is to tell you to continue doing what you're doing.
So I support removing this as well for all the reasons Senator Kitchell said, that it doesn't add anything. I also think it almost subtracts things because it sends a message. We don't have confidence that you're going to keep doing what you've been doing. And I think I personally do have confidence in VTrans, so I support removing this language.
Okay.
Support removing it as well.
And are people amenable to putting something in writing? I mean, as a letter of intent?
Fine. Doesn't hurt, I guess.
I think it's over the top, but if it's going to make somebody feel better, I guess, it's a
Well,
letter.
just-
That's all it is.
maybe that's,
It just takes it out of
Okay, takes it out of the bill. We'll have a
session law, that's all. And,
All right.
Yep.
and
Okay,
and maybe that's something to talk about with your House counterparts, if that is
Right.
where this conversation is headed.
And
okay, yes, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, Senator Mazza, I have to leave.
Yeah, we're gonna end right now anyway, so this is,
Okay.
I think we've accomplished quite a bit today, haven't we, Anthea?
Oh, yeah, no, you guys got through a ton of sections. You have 5 sections to go, plus an additional proposal from the administration on some federal infrastructure authorization. So you really only have like 6 sections that you have not talked about.
All
this
morning,
week.
so that's good. Okay, unless there's anything else this morning, I think we've got a good job done. And anything else anybody wants to mention before we go off air? Okay, I